Thank you very much, Aaron, to come here for our interview for the Berlin Drummer United. Thanks a lot for also for the facilities that the Q Hotel offer. And let's go. So,
well, I agree with that, and I love it. I've spent a lot of time here because I've been working with Marius Westenhagen, who I'm over here working with right now for his tour. So this is my third tour with him. So I've spent a lot of time in the last 4 years. I've spent maybe 3-4 months. So I've gotten to know the city, the different neighborhoods, and I love it. It's got all the culture, all kinds of people. It does remind me a lot of New York, except it's cleaner. It's nicer. It's much nicer, actually. Well, the pro is that you're in New York. So many great musicians. There's a few cities in the world, I think, that are hubs for music. The musicians gravitate towards, and New York is certainly one of them. It's why I moved there 25 years ago. I grew up in Texas, Dallas, Texas, and I knew, okay, I need to go, if I really want to play the best music I can with the best people I can and have a good career the way I'd like, I figured I either need to go to New York or LA. And I chose New York. I just really like the energy of New York. A lot of my favorite music, a lot of jazz, a lot of the records I grew up listening to came out in New York. So the pros are there's just always great musicians to play with. For a drummer, really you get a good kick in the ass because there's always somebody new coming in that's great. You can go see all your heroes. When I first went to New York, I'd go see, Elvin Jones and Tony Williams, and I studied with Purdie and Max Roach, and everybody was there playing. I could just go to a little club and hear your heroes play. A lot of them have died since then, but there's still some great legends. Al Foster, Jimmy Cobb. There's a lot of guys that are still around from that generation that you can just go see or take a lesson with or whatever. Michael Carvin is my teacher now. Amazing. And then there's always some younger guys coming in. Just when you think you're happening, some other guy comes in and it's like, oh shit. So for me right now, I'm kind of right in the middle. I got all these people from the generation or two ahead of me that are older that I've always been inspired by, and all my peers around my age group, and then some of the younger guys that are doing some great stuff. So it's always an inspiring place to be. That's the pros. And there's also, it's a good city to work. There's work there if you want to. I've been lucky. I've been able to be in a band, Spin Doctors, but I also do a lot of sessions and sideman work. And for sideman work, there's a lot of great artists to hire you. The negative is that New York's very expensive, and it's gotten a lot more expensive over the years. Even when I first moved there in 1988, it was expensive. It's crazy expensive, of course, like that. But it's just gone up and up and up and up, and I think the problem is, for musicians, it's not like some other jobs where maybe you make more money now than you did 25 years ago. For the average musician, it's difficult to make that kind of, even the busiest guy, it's difficult to make that kind of money. So, when I first went to town, I actually was able to live in Manhattan. I lived with another guy. We lived in a small apartment. It was, horrible apartment with a big walk up, and I had to take my drums up 5 flights of stairs, whatever, you do what you got to do, but I was in Manhattan. But it's very hard for a lot of people to afford Manhattan, especially, guys that are just coming into town, trying to get their career going. Brooklyn's gotten expensive. It just seems like people have to go further and further out. With that said, just like before, everybody, you figure out a way to get there, you figure out a way to make it work. And people still come there because it's just such a great energy, there's so much talent. And everybody, musicians want to be around other musicians. That's how you make good music, and that's how you grow and get better. So, I love it. Yeah. Thank you for asking. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I guess around it's almost 8 years ago. I decided I wanted to do some of my own music, and I do a lot of composing. and sometimes it's not all suitable for maybe spin doctors. I wanted to do something a little bit different, do some instrumental music, and it's been great, you know. Like you said, I put out Catskills Cry first, which was great. I had Tony Levin on bass, amazing, and Bill Dillon, a great guitar player from Canada. And we went up to Woodstock and recorded it. That was a great experience. Really, really opened up the door for me in a lot of ways. And then I did the second one with some friends of mine in New York City. Great bass player named Richard Hammond, amazing player, and Teddy Kumpel, a great guitar player. And this one was really cool because since we did the last one, we've been playing live. I didn't really play live after the first one. The second one, we've really made it a band. We play in New York City a lot. So that's been a great experience. And we just did this new record, which I love. Like I said, it's coming out April 6th, same group, Teddy and Rich and myself. And, you know, I try to write creative instrumental music. I don't really call it rock, I don't really call it jazz. It's not fusion, I try to kind of shy away from the fusion-y thing and make it more organic and, I don't even know, but I've been influenced by so much stuff lately, different kinds of music. You know, like I'm a really big fan of Bill Frisell, you know, the guitar player, and you know, some of his records have been some of my favorite, what I call instrumental music. His stuff, it's kind of like folk, jazz, rock, I don't even know what you'd call it, but you know, he's such a versatile, unique musician, and he has a record called Gone Like a Train with Jim Keltner on drums and Victor Krause on bass that he put out about 15 years ago, and it was one of my favorite records, and it really influenced the way I write my own music. So that was a big influence, and then I've been, you know, influenced more recently by some of the more, you know, newer groups, some of the more modern stuff. There's a great drummer, Mark Giuliani. I'm sure you know, amazing drummer. He's a friend of mine back in New York. He's, you know, one of my favorite drummers of the guys that are a little bit younger than me. So that's what I was saying before. Like now I got like a guy like Mark, who I can learn something totally fresh from. But I still have all these guys like Purdie and Jim Keltner and all the other guys that kind of shaped who I am. Now I'm trying to go, you know, to the younger guys, and it's starting to affect me and push me in a different direction. So that's, you know, that's what it's all about. And I think this record kind of shows a little bit of that, and the playing and the writing, and you know. But for me, the main thing is really I try to make good melodic music that's fun to listen to. It's not about like, hey, check it out, look how fast I can play. There might be some technical stuff, but it's always coming from a musical place. Well, I think the reason I'm able to be versatile, first of all, is because I really love a lot of my taste is versatile. You know, I think if you don't really like something, you're not going to want to do it. So nobody forced me and said you have to play like this, or if you don't learn how to play a lot of styles, you're not going to do well. It really was just natural. I just truly love growing up, and still I truly love listening to all kinds of music. I come equally from jazz as I do rock, blues. You know, I mean, you know, there's so much great music. And I've studied it all, and I enjoy listening to it all, and I like blending it all together, ultimately, you know. But, so if I'm approaching a new gig, or, you know, I mean, I kind of look at it all the same way. And luckily, again, it's like you put in that time, you get comfortable enough with the styles, and it's not like this major transformation. If all of a sudden you're doing a jazz gig, or folk gig, or whatever, you just kind of, you know, a lot of it's just kind of about the attitude. And to me, the job is always pretty much the same. It's to make music, play time, add something creative, and serve the song, whatever it is. You know, whether you're backing a vocalist, or it's a group interplay, or whatever. So, you know, I always just like try to do my homework before I go into a new session, and come in prepared. And you know, I mean, I find that, you know, the fact that I've learned how to read music is helpful to me. If for instance somebody hands me a chart, I'm ready. But even 9 times out of 10, you don't have a chart. But I find that I'll write my own chart, you know, and I'm able to do it really quickly because I know how to do that, and it makes it just a lot easier for me to have something to look at. Also, kind of figuring out like you know, when going from style to style, is a lot of it is the sound you're going to get for that particular song or group, you know, the choices of cymbals, the choices of drums, how are you going to tune your drums, how are you going to hit the drums. All these things really make a difference, especially in recording, you know. So I just try to tune into all that stuff, you know, a lot. I think the first thing I remember is really getting into rock, you know, like, you know, Led Zeppelin and The Who. I mean, I was born in 1968, so by the time I started discovering, I have a brother who's 3 years older than me, so he kind of started me, you know, he started listening to stuff, and I'd kind of hear that, and, oh, what's that, you know, and so I was pretty young, and I remember, you know, starting to hear like bands like Zeppelin and The Who and the Beatles and the Stones and Cream and, you know, all that stuff was kind of the first. And then we got into like Stevie Wonder, so it was kind of some really soulful stuff. That was the initial kind of thing, rock, and then I just got really into rock, and I started discovering everything that, you know, AC/DC and Kiss and Black Sabbath and really everything, you know, and then of course, you know, you find Rush. I went through my Rush period. I had the, you know, 10 times, and I'm playing along with 2112 like everybody else, turning the lights off, and, you know, and then I started to discover like some of the fusion stuff, you know, Return to Forever, Mahavishnu Orchestra, you know, so then I figured out who Steve Gadd was after a while, and, you know, and from there, you know, as I got a little older, I started to find real jazz, you know, like, you know, Miles Davis and John Coltrane and Charlie Parker, and, you know, and then it just spread and spread and spread from there. But, you know, the earliest guys, I mean, like Bonham, and he's still, I mean, if I kind of got to point to one guy, as far as rock, I just think, you know, he just kind of can't be beat. It's just, and I find that I will channel him a lot when I'm playing. We all channel our favorite drummers, and you can never lose from channeling Bonham because he's just got the biggest, widest, thickest groove. So, you know, you can't go wrong by just thinking about that, because it's going to make your stuff open up a lot. So, you know, Bonham. But you know, but then as I got older, I started discovering like a lot of these R&B and soul drummers and funk drummers, and that kind of got me really kind of honed me in on like the backbeat and a different kind of pocket and groove, which is a big part of what I do now and have for a long time. So like Purdie is one of my favorites, and I was really lucky. Right when I first moved to New York, I studied with him.
Yeah.
So
I want to ask you.
We can talk about that later, but yeah. So that's kind of the short answer or long answer. Jack Iden was probably the greatest thing that ever happened to me. I told my parents I wanted to take drum lessons, and they called up the local music store and took me to the guy there who happened to be Jack Iden. And I think I just got lucky, you know. I mean, a lot of it is like luck. Who's that guy going to be you walk into? And he was a rudimentary drummer. So first day he taught me how to hold the sticks. He said, hold this one like a hammer. I said, that's easy. And then he showed me this, and I was like, what is this? But I stuck with it, and you know, I don't have any opinion on there's no right or wrong, whatever people like, but for me this works great. And it's all because of that guy, you know. And then we went immediately, you know, like, we started learning all the rudiments. The ruff, the flam, the paradiddle, the flamadiddle, the flamacue, the radimacue, flam tab, you know, the drag, the double drag, 5-stroke roll, 7-stroke roll, 9-stroke roll, all that stuff. So then we did all that rudiment and reading. That was what I did with him for 3 years, just rudiments and reading snare drum rudimentary books. So I learned how to read off the bat. I learned rudiments, and it was a big part of, you know, I thank him so much. And I'd go in there kicking and screaming every week, when can I get a drum set? I want a drum set. No, and he said, no drum set. So just a practice pad, and finally he let me get a snare drum. And then 3 years later, he finally said, okay, you can get a drum set. So, you know, I think it's, everybody has their own path. Like I said, there's not a right way or a wrong way. For me, it worked really well. I think it's, at least for what I do, I think it's very helpful to have that backbone, you know. And I think it's harder for a lot of young drummers today. If you don't have somebody kind of push you in that direction, you know, how are you going to know to do it? So I think, you know, too many times people just go from nothing to a drum set. And there's been, you know, look, it works. A lot of great drummers skip all that stuff, but
sooner or later you pay the cost.
I think it's helpful. I mean, you know, whenever I teach lessons, if I have a student, I try to get them to focus on that stuff a little bit, because I think it's, you know, it's like when you pick up a horn, you always learn the scales, you always learn how to read, you don't just go right to this. So I think it's like anything, you know, it's good to have that backbone, even if you don't ever use it, you know.
But it creates the mindset.
Yeah. You're developing your muscles, your mental muscles, and your physical muscles, and it's just going to make everything easier later, you know. And especially with drumming, it's such a physical instrument, you know, you really have to be careful, you know. You don't want to you can easily mess up your arms and your hands and your body, you know. We're like, it's almost like athletes, you know, so you have to like kind of watch your stuff. If you want to play your whole life, you gotta be careful. I mean, I've had some problems along the way, and it's fine now. But most musicians I know that play their whole lives, at some point they have some sort of problem. So you have to really, it's a wake-up call. You know, for me, it was a wake-up call. Say, okay, relax. You know, remember what you learned when you were growing up. You know, because it's kind of that stuff really is important. You know. Purdie was really cool. It was different because I just moved to New York, and every teacher I had before that had been primarily technical. You know, I had some great teachers like Jack I'm talking about. I studied with Rick Latham. He was my first drum set teacher. And then after Rick, I studied with a guy named Henry Oxtell, who used to be Rick's teacher at North Texas State University. So with Rick and with Henry, you know, we really got into like big band reading, drum set technique, all kinds of, with Henry, some really advanced, you know, rhythmical concepts, you know, polyrhythms, and we got into some pretty heavy stuff, and he was great. And he also was the guy that was like, even when we were doing all this super technical stuff, he was like, remember, the most important thing is that it's all got a feel to it, a groove to it. And he put that in my head early on. So up to that point, my lessons were always some sort of technical-based reading thing, practicing, doing this. And then I got to Purdie, and we went on the lesson, and, you know, I'm like sitting in front of one of my heroes, so that's kind of cool, just to be in a room with the guy. Hey, you know. And it wasn't any of that. It was all mostly talking, playing a little bit, talking about concepts. And at first, it was like, you know, I'd walk out of the lessons, and I'd kind of be like, walking down the street, like, wow, what was that? You know, but to this day, a lot of the stuff that he told me, you know, it still comes into my mind. And sometimes, you know, especially when you're younger, when people lay like heavy concepts on you, a lot of times you don't understand it until later. You know, so sometimes, you know, it's a good thing. Just if you don't understand something, just keep it in your mind because it might make sense later. He talked a lot about attitude. And I didn't know what he was talking about. He said, you need to play with more attitude, you know, attitude. I couldn't figure out what he was talking about, so I'm just like, okay. And, you know, of course, later I really understood what he meant, you know, and, you know, we talked a lot about feel and playing for the song, which, you know, obviously Purdie is an expert at that. And sound, we talked a lot about sound, you know, how to get different sounds out of the drums and out of the cymbals and being very aware of that. He really helped me with the ghost stroke thing. Obviously, he's, you know, a master at that. And I'd started working on that kind of concept before then. My other teacher, Henry Oxtell, pointed out to me that I was dragging my left hand on the snare. It was kind of a bad habit. I'd be playing backbeat. He's like, you know, you're dragging your. And I was like, oh, okay, you know, and I wasn't really sure. And it was kind of like ghost strokes, but so I kind of took a bad habit, and then I started to develop and figure it out. Okay. And then I started really, with Purdie, listening to him and what he was doing, and started to work on that and made it kind of a part of my style. You know, and if you do it right, you know, it just creates like a nice undercurrent that you feel more than you hear. And it became pretty prominent in some of the Spin Doctors stuff, you know. But yeah, Purdie it was kind of a transitional period when I went from, I think, being like more of a technical guy to more of a feel, you know, and I'm taking lessons again. I started taking lessons again about a year ago with Michael Cartman in New York, who's great. Again, the main guys, Bonham, for rock, Bonham, you know, Charlie Watts. I love the Rolling Stones, I love Charlie Watts, I love Ringo Starr, the Beatles. You know, and all three of those guys are totally different, but all amazing, you know. So like, you know, for rock and roll, Bonham, Charlie Watts, Ringo, Levon Helm, you know, I mean, there's some more guys, but like they kind of, those are the guys I my go-to guys, you know. And then jazz, Tony Williams, maybe my favorite drummer ever. Elvin Jones, Roy Haynes, those three guys are like.
Max Roach.
I love Max Roach too. I mean, amazing, you know. And you wouldn't have the other guys without him. There's so many, but my favorites, like, you know, it's like Elvin and Tony and Roy. It's just those three guys. For some reason, I just really relate to that the best. And then, you know, guys like Bernard Purdie, obviously I mentioned, Jim Keltner, one of my favorites, Steve Gadd, amazing, for years and years. You know, well, I mean, certainly, without thinking about it, it came from my rudimentary upbringing, right? Because there's 5-stroke rolls in there, so, you know, it's hard for me to pinpoint exactly where that came from. When we were playing around New York, we used to play clubs all the time. And, you know, a lot of times we'd like to keep the momentum going between song to song. So sometimes I would do drum intros instead of counting off the song. And somehow that then just stuck, you know. I don't remember the first time I did it, or it wasn't like I sat down and said, okay, I'm going to go, let me think about this. It was just something that kind of happened organically, and I guess it worked, and I stuck with it, and it became, you know, the intro.
Yeah.
So,
but I mean, that is one of the things that everybody in the world can recognize.
Well,
everybody.
I'm grateful. Yeah.
I think you are one of the few drummers that 2-3 notes you understand. It's Aaron. No.
Well, it's, you know, it's an honor. Thank you for saying that. It's cool. I'm lucky too that they recorded it really well. The sound of that record is such a great sound.
It's so new, it's so fresh. After
it still sounds good. I think, you know, we were pretty comfortable. We were making that record. This was like early '90s when we recorded that record, and we were it was coming out of the, you know, in the '80s everything was so big, you know, the big gated reverb, and we weren't really like, we grew up. Our taste was more like the 60s and 70s music, kind of more the classic rock, and then we all loved funk music, you know, Parliament Funkadelic and James Brown and, you know, soul stuff. That was kind of the influence that the Spin Doctors really had. It was like soul, R&B, funk, and rock, you know, and not so much the 80s sound. So when we were going to make the record, we were very careful. We didn't want it to have this like big sound, you know. If anything, we wanted it to sound like, you know, smaller, and we wanted it to sound good 20 years later. You know what I mean? And I like a lot of the 80s stuff. I actually like it more now than I did then. But you hear it and you're like, 80s, you know, and, you know, so regardless, I mean, I think we... Well, the whole music business has changed dramatically. I mean, you know, that was, what is it, you know, 20-something years ago, you know. I mean, we had you know, that record was really blowing up about 20 years ago. You know, 93, 94 was the peak. That thing was like really happening. So now it's 2014. So it was a different time, you know, you could sell a lot of records. It sold that record sold like 10 million copies around the world. You know, I mean, it's crazy. You just can't do that anymore. Even the biggest records don't sell that much. You know, so we're very lucky. At the same time, I think one thing is very similar, which is that you still have to work really hard. You still have to be really good. You still have to have something unique. You still have to go out on the road and develop a fan base, and you know, it's without that, it's going to be difficult to do it. And that was the same thing back then. The difference now is, you know, it's harder to make money with record sales, but you know, you have to count on making more money with your live shows now. And I always tell people, whenever young guys come to me, what should I do? I got a band, or I'm a drummer, or, you know, what? Well, this really applies to bands more, or any act, you know. What should I do? How should my band get out on the road and go play gigs and meet people? I think there's the way. I think so. I mean, there's a notion that, oh, I'm going to stay home on my computer, I'm going to get 1,000 or 100,000 Facebook likes, I'm going to get YouTube hits, and that's all cool. I mean, that is part of it, but that's not it, man. You got to get off the computer, or get on the computer when you're in the van or whatever. But
get your ass on the stage.
Get on your ass on the stage. You know, that's it. So that, you know, that's how we did it. We had a hit because we toured our brains out, because the record company did nothing. They were like, you guys don't have any hits,
you need to make another record, this record isn't a hit. We just toured, and we sold a lot of records. We didn't get any help from them at first. It wasn't until about a year and a half later, when they said come home, and we said no, we're going back on the road, that things started to happen, and slowly but surely, some radio played it, and then they were like, wait a minute, something's happening here. And that's when they threw down some money and everything blew up. But, you know, had we not done that road work and continued to, you know, we wouldn't be sitting here today talking about Two Princes, that's for sure. You know, so, that, I mean, it's, you know, it's definitely different times, there's no question. I think you just got to be creative and you have to work. I mean, you know, no matter what level you're on, it's hard work.
But the road is still the way.
I think for a band, I mean, yeah, well, Edie Brickell and the New Bohemians, they went to the same high school I went to in Dallas, Arts Magnet. So those guys were like some of my best friends growing up. And we used to jam and, you know, have great times. And then, of course, they went on to do really well. And then, I guess about 5 years ago, we did this gig in Dallas. It was basically all the guys in the band and Edie and me on drums. We did this band called Heavy Makeup, just all improvising songs. It was great, it went really well. And then Edie asked me, Edie was putting on a record, and she said, you know, do you want to come out and do some TV and some gigs? And I said, yeah, that'd be great. And that worked out well, and then we started a record. And we've done like 3 different recording sessions for this record. Hopefully it'll come out sometime. It keeps getting pushed back because she's so busy. She's always doing like, she's got the band with Steve Gadd, the Gaddabouts. And then she just put out this record with Steve Martin that won a Grammy. So she's on the road with them. So, but we have a great record in the can. Hopefully it'll come out sometime in the next year. But she's great. She's really, really talented songwriter, very unique.
Yeah, very unique.
Yeah, real good. And, you know, she's got her own thing. It's great.
And with Mario Müller-Westernhagen?
I think it was 2008 maybe, it was when he put out his Williamsburg record. Basically I got the call from Kevin Bentz, who's Marius's producer and musical director. And they needed a new drummer. So Marius just told Kevin, he said, why don't you get who do you think, you know, get somebody from New York? And so Kevin called me, okay. And it's been great. And then we did from that tour, they recorded it, they put out a live record. Are you okay with the light?
I don't think so. Yeah, still.
Yeah?
Okay.
So they put out a live record, Hottentotten, and then we did a tour with that last year. And now we just made a record in New York, Alpha Tier, which is coming out in a couple of weeks, which is why I'm here now, doing the tour for the record. And it's great. He's great. I love him. He's a super cool guy, very humble, great to work for, and it's just a great band. He's really talented performer. He's one of these guys that he plays in front of these big arenas, and he's just so relaxed. He makes everybody feel comfortable. So it's been a good experience. Well, I would say Aretha Franklin live at the Fillmore. Live at the Fillmore East, I believe it is. It's Bernard Purdie. That was one of my big ones, you know, when I was like 18, that I was really checking out. Just for amazing pocket, groove, soul drumming. Definitely check that one out. Tony Williams, Miles Smiles is another one for jazz. Just incredible, innovative, great, amazing playing. And then, Zeppelin 4, classic. So that's I mean, I could keep on going, but those are 3 kind of good jazz, rock, soul, groove. I mean, those are 3 of my, kind of the triangle for me, And then there's all kinds of other stuff over here, but Brady is amazing. I mean, they're some of the best drums ever made. They're great. I was lucky that I kind of when the Spin Doctors had our record deal, and we were getting ready to go in the studio. We had a little money to buy some equipment, and I just kind of wanted. I had always played Yamaha. I still have my Yamaha Steve Gadd recording series kit that I got when I was 16, and that drum set still sounds incredible. I still use it. Amazing drums. I just wanted something a little different at the time, and so I went into Manny's in New York City, and they just got these drums from Australia called Brady. I was like, that's, nobody has those. And I checked them out; it sounded great, and I really just got them because I figured, well, nobody else has these. This will be something different, whatever. And they were great, and I used them in the studio and used them on the, I didn't do any endorsement for a long time because I just wanted to play the Bradys, and I didn't really need an endorsement really because we were just touring, we were bringing our own gear everywhere. It's like I didn't really care about getting a bunch of free stuff. It's like whatever. And but then it got to the point where I think when I started working with a lot more people, and even the band was not touring as much, but flying here and flying there, I needed something that was going to be like, okay, I need a great drum kit in Cleveland, I need a great drum kit in Berlin, I need a great drum kit in San Francisco, and and Yamaha, I've been using them since I was a kid. I'm a huge fan of their drums, and they've been great. I called them up, and they've been amazing. I got a great relationship with them. I love their stuff. I played, all their drums are great, but I have some of their, they came out with a line a couple years ago called the Club Customs, which I love. So I have a kit of those. On the road, I usually, if I'm at a fly date, I find that like the recording series are they always sound good. They tune up easily, I think they're like probably the most consistently good sounding drums that are made, which is perfect for when you're traveling. So they've been great. And I got, Brady, I love Brady. They've been really good to me. They're good friends. They make great stuff, All the drums are great. It's like you find something you like, but ultimately I think it's the drummer. You have to have good equipment. You have to have good equipment. And there's no question about it. Different kinds of wood and different drums, they do sound different, but every drummer sounds different on every drum, So, a lot of times people are like, well, how did you get that snare to sound that way? I'm like, or I used to have all these people say, man, we spent like 3 hours. Well, it just depends, usually it's, depending on the room and who the engineer is, the producer is. If I'm the producer, then I'll have my own opinion about what I want to do, but if I'm just the drummer, then it's up to them, I like all kinds of different techniques. There's the standard, a mic on everything with some overheads and some room mics, and then there's, which is great, and especially depending on how the room sounds, how much room you go, where you put the mics. I'm also a fan of less. Sometimes I like to do like just 2 or 3 mics. If you have a really nice sounding room, that can be a great way to get just a good natural sound. Because then you control your sound. It's dangerous. The more mics you have, the more you're in danger of somebody messing with your stuff. And I was working one time down in Compass Point Studio. It's in Bahamas. And Terry Manning, who runs the place, he's an engineer. He worked with Led Zeppelin on some, I forget, maybe it was Zeppelin 3 or, I don't know, one of the early Zeppelin records. And I asked him, I said, so what was it like, man? You got to record Bonham, He said, yeah. He said, as soon as Bonham walked in the room, he said, he looked at me and he said, you can only use 3 mics on my drums. I mix my drums, not you. Because Bonham was like, I don't want you putting 20 mics. And, he put wherever they decided, to do it. But Bonham understood, like, I'm gonna, I know how to play the drums. I'm gonna mix my own stuff. I'm not gonna give the control to you. And it's something to be said for that, And if you have the right equipment and the right sound, a less is more approach to miking can be incredible. It really can be. Then everything just sounds. I'm not a fan of like. Sometimes when there's so many mics and the tom-toms all the way over here and the tom-toms all the way over there, and that's not what it sounds like when you're sitting in front of it. It's like when you're sitting in front of a drum kit, you hear a little bit of spread, but so if I have something to say with it, usually things are a little bit more kind of, I like mono too, but they're a little bit more real. I like things to sound kind of like they do. I don't like this kind of weird, So it just depends, but. It's a whole nother art form, recording and making the drums sound right, and how you tune the drums, and we could talk forever about that. But having a good engineer will make or break you in the studio. Because Syncopation, Jim Chapin. Those are my 2 books. I still use them every time I practice. I go to them, you know.
Too, for me,
I mean,
the Bible.
Yeah, it's the Bible. And if there was one, if I had, I mean, they're both. It's syncopation. If I could only bring one, I'd say syncopation, just because, you know, there's those 7 pages in the middle that you can do a million things with. So whenever I get the chance, I work on, you know, from the snare drum to independence to drum set, just with those long. You know, we're gonna probably next year.
Next year.
Yeah, I mean we're busy. We're gonna be over here in Europe this summer. We're doing some festivals. Actually, I think we're gonna be in Italy for a week. So I know there's a lot of Italian people on the site. So I'll let you know so you guys can come out and
For sure.
we can meet. I'm not sure about Berlin. I'm sure I would say next year, probably 2015, because we have a lot of gigs in the States and it's getting pretty busy. But we'll be back. Thanks for all the support, everybody.
Thanks to you, Aaron.
Appreciate it. Hey, great to see you, man. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. All right.